Hey, this is Molly, and I'm here to answer another homeschool question for you. So today's question, she says, I really hate feeling like a failure. I have four kids, 14 down to toddler. We've homeschooled from the start. My middle two, 8 and 6, are driving me absolutely insane, and I'm about to enroll them because I can't deal with it day in and day out. If they actually sit and do their work, it's done really fast, but more often than not, it's like pulling teeth to get them to even start. My 8-year-old can't spell worth crap. She will do her spelling lessons and she's totally fine, but as soon as it's anything outside the workbook, it goes out the window and she spells phonetically. She's in third grade. Shouldn't she be able to spell words better than this? My husband's decided our daughter is just not learning at home and she's got to be enrolled in school. And then there's our 6-year-old who's kindergarten. He's incredibly smart and is almost halfway through first grade math. And it's not even a challenge for him, but he has anger issues. So I'm worried about sending him to kindergarten, that it will result in him being bored and throwing epic tantrums and having meltdowns when he can't have his way, or he doesn't get picked for everything, or something just doesn't go his way. I don't want to force a teacher with 20 other 6-year-olds to have to deal with that, but I just can't deal with it at home. How do I do this? How do I not feel like a failure all the time? How do I feel like I'm going to How do I not feel like I'm going to strangle them out of frustration? Yep, I totally understand. And I want to let you know you're not a failure if you feel like this. I do understand the feeling of failure. We get that so often, but I finally had to realize that with anything, there's a learning curve to get to the result we want. And it's through the obstacles that we learn. And that's the problem is sometimes these obstacles feel like the fails, but it doesn't mean that you are a failure. It just means you haven't learned what you need to yet. So one thing is, too, sometimes it is really frustrating to be a homeschool mom, and it's not a bad thing to put your kids in a different situation for the time being. However, sometimes when we do put our kids in a different place, that is kind of like shutting the door on the problem, but the problem's still there. We just don't see it as much. So that's just something that you have to decide very carefully, right? So another thing that I've noticed that happens too is often the first kid is more of a traditional learner, easier to do to teach because he's your oldest and you have more time, right? And so sometimes what happens with homeschoolers, we start thinking, oh, I've got this all figured out because look at this, my oldest kid is thriving, right? But there is a big difference with the birth order. Kind of crazy, right? Because you'll start thinking, oh, I've got this all figured out until you've got another kid that comes along that's totally different, right? So my guess is for you, this mom, which is most all of us moms, I think you're doing a way better job than you think you are. And I think a lot of times husbands threaten or suggest putting kids back in school because they're more worried about us as the homeschool mom because you're worried, but also because you're frustrated and it's really difficult. So, that's something to think about too. Now, the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that you can go at the child's pace. And I did not realize this for a long time when I first started out. And it was the comparison that made me feel like I was failing. So if I had a third grader that couldn't spell, I would be thinking, what am I doing wrong? Just like this mom. And I must be doing this wrong. But what we don't realize is that kids do not learn at the pace of what the curriculum says just because it says third grade, right? When the kid is ready, they can learn it so fast. When I decided to focus instead on my children's strengths and let them go at their own pace and also maybe nudge them along sometimes too, I don't always just let them dawdle. I could let go of the comparison. It was so freeing not to have to worry about the curriculum levels. Because this is the thing. We assume that children should learn exactly as these grade levels and standards tell us they should, but children they just don't learn that way. They don't, we think they're just learning on this nice straight path, but children are more like roller coasters with their learning, right? If you look at the public schools, there's a ton of repetition in the grade levels because the kids don't all learn at that pace. So it did help me a lot to write down what I really wanted for my homeschool. And then it helped a lot to make sure that I was taking care of me first so I could handle the bumps in the day, like getting enough sleep, getting exercise, eating well, and that sort of thing. Because it seems like there isn't enough time in the day to do all that. But I found out that when I prioritized that, it made my days go so much more smoothly and I didn't have to get as frustrated. Now, 8 is still pretty young, and a lot of kids do not know how to spell at that age. And for many kids, it's just not relevant yet. And they have no reason to remember it. So maybe she just needs to work on visualization skills because typically good spellers can visualize the word they need to know how. And like anger issues, behavior issues. Yeah, sometimes sending them off to school can help. What I found is like with my kids that had anger issues, I had one that I did send off to kindergarten who had anger issues, and she was great in school. But you know what? She saved it all up, and when she got home, boom, it all came out, right? Because it was a safe place. Another kid with anger issues, basically, our school time was learning him how to deal with it, to manage his anger, and learn how to obey mom. And that's okay, right? And sometimes that seems overwhelming to do, but I find that with just 3 to 4 weeks of consistent effort, it can get way better. Sometimes it's just difficult because they get angry and you don't want them to be angry at you more. But if we can just focus on that and just say, this is school, it's going to get better. When you are homeschooling, you're with the kid whole thing. You see all the issues and it is difficult, right? But it's one of our best learning opportunities as homeschool moms is we're going to learn how to be more patient and how to love our kids and how to see their potential and how to guide them on the path. And these things we have to do whether we homeschool or not, right? So the issues still need to be dealt with either way. It is overwhelming when you have a lot going on, but if you can just pick one thing to focus on at a time, because that's the problem, they all start building up, and just, pause and wait for the frustrations on the other ones, things can get better. They really can. I promise. And I know you're doing a great job, even if it's not as perfectly as you would like it to be in your head, but you are doing a great job because you love your children. You want the best for them, and you will figure it out. You will.